The 2024 NFL season has ended and the 2025 offseason has officially begun. Free agency begins in just a few weeks, so that's why in this video, I'm going to be selecting one pending free agent that every NFL team needs to sign this offseason. If you enjoyed this video, then please drop a like and subscribe if you're new. Subscribing takes just a second and it really helps me out. Thank you, and let's get started. Arizona Cardinals, offensive tackle Ronnie Stanley. The Cardinals have a lot of problems on their roster, but one of their biggest ones was the offensive line. Kyler Murray was pressured on nearly 30% of his dropbacks last season. Their current right tackle is a 35-year-old Kelvin Beachum who is also a pending free agent, so why not bring in one of the better tackles in the league who's also 5 years younger? Him or Paris Johnson may have to switch to right tackle, but Johnson did play right tackle in his rookie season, so he has experience there. The Cardinals are going to want to do anything they can to help Kyler Murray, and bringing in more protection is going to do just that. Atlanta Falcons, edge rusher Josh Sweat. The Falcons had one of the worst defenses in the league last year, and their pass rush was a big reason for that. They finished second worst in sacks, with just 31 on the whole year. That's where Josh Sweat comes in. The 27-year-old is coming off a 54 pressure, 8 sack season with the Eagles, and he could be a huge help for a struggling Falcons pass rush. If he doesn't resign with the Eagles, the Falcons need to do whatever they can to bring him into their building, because they cannot afford to have another pass rush like last year's. Baltimore Ravens, wide receiver Mike Williams. The Ravens have never had amazing receiver talent. In fact, last season, Zay Flowers became the first ever Ravens wide receiver to be named a Pro Bowler. However, he's their only reliable weapon. Additionally, the Ravens do not have a single wide receiver on their depth chart above 6'1". They're lacking that big outside receiver that can win contested catches, and Mike Williams can be that guy. He's coming off a season where he had a 70% contested catch rate and just one drop all year. He doesn't have to be a focal point of the offense, but if Lamar needs to just get rid of it, Williams is more likely to come down with it than not. Buffalo Bills, wide receiver Marquise Brown. We all know how strong Josh Allen's arm is, but the Bills don't have any receivers that can keep up with that arm. This caused the Bills to run more of a quick game offense, which was effective, but didn't fully utilize Allen's strengths. Enter Marquise Brown, who is one of the fastest players in the NFL and can truly take the top off a defense. The quick game offense will draw defenders in close to the box, and that's where Brown can race by them for a deep ball. Adding Brown gives the Bills an explosive element to their offense that they didn't have last season. I understand he's coming off an injury and didn't put up big numbers last year, but he's still a big play threat at all times. Carolina Panthers, cornerback Charvarius Ward. The Panthers have seemingly fixed their offense, at least a little bit. However, their defense was the worst in the league last season, and if they want to even attempt to win a meaningful amount of games next year, they need defensive help. Ward isn't coming off his best season, but he is still a pretty good corner that has shown he can be elite. He can provide some much needed help to that defense. Chicago Bears, edge rusher Chase Young. The Bears had a pretty good defense last season. However, their edge room leaves much to be desired. Outside of Montez Sweat, there isn't anyone that defenses have to try and game plan for. They need a talented guy there, and that's where Young comes in. Young is still only 25 and is coming off a 66 pressure, 5.5 sack season. The former number 2 overall pick still has a lot of potential, and if the Bears can develop him right, he could be a force on that D-line. Plus, he'll be paired back up with Montez Sweat, so that could be helpful as well. It is a bit of a gamble, but Chase Young has the potential to take this Bears pass rush to the next level. Cincinnati Bengals, offensive guard Trey Smith. I understand that defense is a big need for the Bengals, but at the same time, so is right guard. Current right guard Alex Kappa had one of the worst offensive line seasons in recent memory, as he led all interior offensive linemen in pressures allowed, sacks allowed, and QB hurries allowed. He was absolutely awful, and a big reason why Joe Burrow was pressured on over 34% of his dropbacks. Trey Smith has been a consistent player ever since he came into the league, and hasn't allowed more than 40 pressures since his rookie season, and has never allowed more than 2 sacks since his rookie season, and has had a PFF grade above 70 every season of his career. The Bengals do need to address defense, but Smith should provide some much needed stability on that offensive line. Cleveland Browns, offensive tackle Cam Robinson. The Browns are in the middle of a major rebuild, and they could use some extra pass protection. Current left tackle and former first-round pick Jedrick Wills Jr. is a pending free agent, and I don't think the Browns are too keen on bringing him back. Robinson isn't the best option available, but the Browns can't afford to be allocating a bunch of money to left tackle when they have a lot of other needs. Robinson shouldn't be too expensive and will provide solid play that the Browns can build off of. Dallas Cowboys, wide receiver Chris Godwin. The Cowboys had a pretty disappointing 2024 season, but this team is still too talented to not try and compete next year. However, one of their main positions of need is at wideout, as Jalen Tolbert isn't anything special and Brandon Cooks is a pending free agent. Enter Chris Godwin, who would be a perfect slot option to take some attention away from CeeDee Lamb. Godwin was on pace to have the best season of his career before his injury, and I think the 28-year-old can bounce back from that. He could play a similar role to what he did in Tampa, just with CeeDee Lamb as being the number one instead of Mike Evans. Godwin will be a reliable option that Dak can go to at any time, and this signing will greatly improve the Cowboys' offense. Denver Broncos, tight end Mike Gesicki. The Broncos did a lot of things right in 2024. Their defense was excellent, and Bo Nix and the offense were also really good. However, one position they could really improve on is tight end. The Broncos don't have a single tight end on their depth chart that has over 300 yards in the season. Meanwhile, Mike Gesicki is coming off a solid season with the Bengals, catching 65 passes for 665 yards and 2 touchdowns. Bo Nix does like to take his checkdowns, and Gesicki would be a perfect option. Detroit Lions, edge rusher Khalil Mack. The Lions had an injury-filled 2024 season that ended in disappointment, but even before all of the injuries, the Lions still had a major hole, and that was a pass rusher opposite Aiden Hutchinson. That's where Khalil Mack comes in, who's coming off yet another phenomenal season where he finished with a PFF grade of 90.4. With Aiden Hutchinson taking up double teams, Mack will almost always be one-on-one, and he can be a dominant force. Mack isn't a long-term signing, but the Lions don't need a long-term player. They need people that can help them win a Super Bowl now, and Mack can do just that. Green Bay Packers, wide receiver Stefon Diggs. Josh Jacobs said it himself, the Packers need a wide receiver who's proven that he can be a number one, and Diggs has. He's coming off a torn ACL, but he's still one of the better receivers in the league. Diggs played pretty well last season, averaging 62 yards per game, meaning that had he played all 17 games, he would have finished with 1,054 yards, which would have been his 7th straight 1,000-yard season. Diggs may not quite be the player he used to be, but he's still a damn good receiver that can elevate this Packers offense to new heights. Houston Texans, center Ryan Kelly. The Texans offense took a big step back this season, and the main reason for that was the offensive line. CJ Stroud was pressured on nearly 38% of his dropbacks and took 52 sacks, which really hurt both his and the offense's production. This is where Ryan Kelly comes in. He only played 10 games last season, but allowed just 11 pressures and 1 sack. The season before, he played in 14 games and allowed just 7 pressures. Kelly will provide stability on that O-line that the Texans definitely need, and this signing will help the offense to regain their 2023 form. Indianapolis Colts, tight end Juwan Johnson. The Colts have talent at all their skill positions, except for tight end, as none of the tight ends on their depth chart have had over 400 yards in a season. Johnson is coming off the best season of his career with 548 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had just 2 drops and a 66.7 contested catch rate. So if Anthony Richardson, or whoever's going to be the Colts QB next year, needs to just throw it up in a pinch, Johnson is going to come down with it more often than not. Jacksonville Jaguars, center Coleman Shelton. The Jags are in no position to contend, but that doesn't mean they can't help protect Trevor Lawrence. They signed Mitch Morse last season, but not only is he 32 years old, he was also not very good for them. Shelton, on the other hand, while not being the best in the world, is a decent center that can play some solid ball until the Jags find a long-term solution. They have to protect their franchise QB as best as possible, and Shelton will help with that. Kansas City Chiefs, offensive tackle Alaric Jackson. The Chiefs had a great season, but their tackle duo was one of the main reasons why they didn't win the Super Bowl, and one of the main reasons why they scored more than 30 points just once. It got so bad that left guard Joe Thuney had to play left tackle because the Chiefs didn't trust anyone else. However, Jackson, who's just 26 years old, had a breakout season with the Rams, allowing just 22 pressures and 3 sacks in 14 games. His run blocking was also pretty good, paving the way for Kyren Williams, who had a great season himself. The Chiefs desperately need a tackle, and Jackson could be the long-term answer they've been looking for. Las Vegas Raiders, quarterback Sam Darnold. The Raiders' quarterback situation is widely known as one of the worst in the league. You could argue that they don't even have a top 32 quarterback on their roster. Additionally, they sit with the 6th pick in the draft, meaning the chances that Cam Moore or Shadur Sanders falls to them are slim to none, and no other quarterbacks are worth taking that high. This year's free agent QB class is also not good, except for one guy, Sam Darnold. Under the Vikings and Kevin O'Connell, Darnold had a breakout season, finishing with 4,319 yards and 35 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. His Week 18 and wildcard performances were really bad, but it's not like the Raiders are reaching the playoffs anytime soon. I don't expect Darnold to perform quite as well on the Raiders as he did with the Vikings, but he can still be a solid bridge quarterback until the Raiders find a long-term solution. Los Angeles Chargers, wide receiver Darius Slayton. The Chargers had a better season than most expected, but they had one glaring problem: wide receiver. Outside of Ladd McConkey, none of the Chargers receivers were very good. However, the Chargers were still able to make it work most of the time, and that was because they did a great job of playing to their guys' strengths. The Chargers' current receiving room is pretty diverse. They have a great slot option in Ladd McConkey, they have a big outside receiver in Quentin Johnston, and they have a reliable possession receiver in Josh Palmer. However, they are missing a deep threat to go along with Justin Herbert's cannon for an arm, and that's where Darius Slayton comes in. He may not be the best receiver in the world, there's no denying his abilities as a deep threat. His 4.39 speed makes him a dangerous player at all times, and with McConkey and others pulling defenses down, Slayton could have some really big plays and bring some more explosiveness to the Chargers' offense. Los Angeles Rams, wide receiver Amari Cooper. It's looking like Cooper Kupp is headed out the door, and I don't think the Rams are too keen on making Demarcus Robinson and Tutu Atwell their 2 and 3. That's where Amari Cooper comes in, as he may not have had the best season in 2024, but he's still shown that he can be a really good player at times. He's just 1 year removed from a career-high 1,250-yard season. He also shouldn't command too much money due to him coming off a down year. With Puka Nacua taking all the attention, Cooper should be able to be a solid number 2 option for Matthew Stafford. Miami Dolphins, offensive guard Will Fries. What happens when you have an injury-prone quarterback and multiple offensive linemen that are pending free agents? You bring in better offensive linemen. Will Fries may have only played 5 games last season, but he was in the middle of the best season of his career, only allowing 6 pressures and 2 sacks. He was also one of the best run blockers in the NFL, having an 84.9 PFF run blocking grade, which was 5th among guards. Because he's coming off an injury, Fries won't command too much money, but the 26-year-old has proven that he can play at a high level and would be a great addition to the Dolphins' offense. Minnesota Vikings, defensive tackle Milton Williams. Despite finishing 14-3 last season, the Vikings still have a lot of issues, mainly in the trenches. They still don't have an interior defensive lineman that can generate a consistent pass rush, so why not bring in a player with the second highest PFF pass rushing grade out of all interior D linemen? Williams finished the 2024 regular season with 40 pressures and 5 sacks, which is pretty solid for an interior guy. But he saved his best ball for the postseason, as in just 4 games, Williams had 14 pressures and 2 sacks. Those 2 sacks coming in the biggest game of all, the Super Bowl. Williams is just 25 years old, and the Vikings have the 7th most cap space in the NFL. He will be expensive, but Williams would be an incredible addition for the Vikings. New England Patriots, wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins. The Patriots need a lot of things, but they desperately need to get Drake May some help. He's currently throwing to wide receiver 3s and backups right now, which is no way to handle a young quarterback's development. DeAndre Hopkins isn't the player he used to be, but the 32-year-old is still one of the most reliable receivers in the NFL. He had just 2 drops last season and converted on 52.2% of his contested catch looks. Hopkins is the perfect receiver for May, because he can be the guy that May turns to whenever he's in trouble. Hopkins helped Deshaun Watson have some of his best years, and he helped Kyler Murray have some of his best years, and I think he can do the same thing for May. New Orleans Saints, defensive tackle Poona Ford. This isn't a flashy signing, as the Saints are currently $47 million over the cap, but Poona Ford can be a much-needed asset to help the Saints' run defense, which was the 2nd worst in the entire NFL last year. Ford is coming off the best season of his career, earning a 78.8 PFF run defense grade, the highest since his rookie year, though he only played a fraction of the snaps that season. Ford matches up perfectly with Brian Brzee, as Brzee is the splash play pass rusher, while Ford is the consistent run defender. Again, it's not the most exciting signing in the world, but it's an important one. New York Giants, cornerback DJ Reed. The Giants need a lot of things, and cornerback is one of them. Adoree Jackson is solid, but outside of him, there really isn't anyone else that's good in that room. Deonte Banks had a horrible second season where he even got benched in the middle of it. The Giants desperately need somebody else that can consistently cover, and DJ Reed is just that. Reed had a really good 2024 season, allowing more than 50 yards in just 4 out of his 13 games. He didn't record an interception, but had 7 pass breakups and 2 touchdowns. Reed has shown that he can be a number 1 corner, and for the Giants, he would be just that. New York Jets, quarterback Justin Fields. The Aaron Rodgers experiment obviously didn't work out, mostly for his off-field shenanigans rather than his on-field play. The Jets are moving off from him, and they sit at the 7th pick in the draft, which is no position to draft a quarterback this year. That's where Fields comes in. The 25-year-old is still an explosive quarterback with high upside as a rushing threat and can be a solid bridge quarterback until they get a long-term solution. Fields posted a career best in completion percentage, turnover-worthy play percentage, and passer rating in 2024. In 6 games, Fields threw for 1,106 yards, 5 touchdowns, and just 1 interception, while also adding 231 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. Fields definitely has his issues, but he can be a good quarterback. We've seen it. The Jets don't really have any better options anyway, because I know they aren't going to throw Jordan Travis out there. Philadelphia Eagles, offensive guard Kevin Zeitler. The Eagles don't really need much. I mean, they just won the Super Bowl. However, they do have a 364-pound hole at right guard, as Mekhi Becton is a pending free agent who is likely to command quite a payday after his good season. But you can't get too much better than Kevin Zeitler, who, despite being 34 years old, is still playing some great ball. He allowed just 18 pressures in 16 games and actually put up the best overall PFF grade since 2014. Zeitler really shined as a run blocker, boasting an 87.2 PFF run blocking grade, which was 3rd among all guards. The Eagles love big, physical offensive linemen, and Zeitler is perfect for that role. Pittsburgh Steelers, quarterback Aaron Rodgers. The Steelers are in desperate need of a quarterback, with the likely departure of both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. And unfortunately for them, they are in no place to draft a quarterback, and this free agent QB class is garbage. I would give them Sam Darnold, but he's likely to command at least $40 million a year, and the Raiders have $40 million more in cap space than the Steelers do, which is why I gave him to them. As for the Rodgers, as long as he doesn't try to be the owner of everything like he did with the Jets, he can actually still play pretty solid ball. People like to talk like he was an atrocious quarterback last year when he really wasn't. He threw for 3,897 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions, and while it isn't quite what we're used to seeing from Rodgers, it was far from bad. Rodgers can be a solid bridge quarterback for a bit, and if the Steelers bring in some extra weapons, their offense could be pretty decent. San Francisco 49ers, offensive guard Tevin Jenkins. Injuries plagued the 49ers' 2024 season, but so did the offensive line. Brock Purdy was pressured on over 37% of his dropbacks, and while Trent Williams getting hurt did play a factor, having pending free agent left guard Aaron Banks playing nearly 800 snaps didn't help either. I don't think the 49ers are too keen on bringing Banks back, but they should be keen on upgrading the position, and that's what Tevin Jenkins can do. The 26-year-old has been a very consistent player throughout his career, never allowing more than 20 pressures in a season. He's coming off arguably the best season of his career, with a career best at pass block efficiency and pressure percentage. Jenkins would be a great help to the 49ers offensive line problems, and with their superstars returning healthy, the 49ers offense could rise to the top once again. Seattle Seahawks, center Drew Dalman. Just like the division rival 49ers and Cardinals, the Seahawks also have offensive line problems. Geno Smith was pressured on just under 38.5% of his dropbacks in 2024, and their current center is Olu Oluwatimi, who isn't very good. Dalman isn't the biggest name, but he's a very solid pass blocker and one of the better run blocking centers in the league. He only played 9 games last season, but allowed just 10 pressures and 2 sacks, while maintaining the highest pass block efficiency of his career. The Seahawks are $6 million over the cap, but they should be able to trim that down, and Dalman likely won't command as much money as some of the other offensive linemen. It isn't a super flashy signing, but Dalman will contribute right away and will make the Seahawks offense better. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, linebacker Zach Bond. The Bucs don't actually have too many holes on their roster, but their linebacker room could use some work. Levante David is 35 years old, and their other linebacker, KJ Britt, was straight up ass last season, allowing a 109.6 passer rating when targeted and boasting a whopping 45.2 PFF grade, which was 171st out of 189 linebackers. The Bucs could really use some linebacker help, so why not bring in a first-team All-Pro in Zach Bond? Bond was arguably the best linebacker last season, leading all linebackers with at least 50 snaps in defensive stops, forced fumbles, PFF coverage grade, and PFF overall grade. Bond was an instrumental part of the Eagles' Super Bowl run, and if the Eagles don't re-sign him, the Bucs absolutely need to, as he will take their defense to the next level. Tennessee Titans, offensive tackle Tyron Smith. The Titans need a lot of help, but they mainly need to protect whichever quarterback they're going to be drafting with the first overall pick, likely Cam Ward. J.C. Latham was solid as a rookie, but their right tackle Jalen Duncan is not exactly who you want in there. Tyron Smith has been one of the better right tackles in the league ever since he got drafted back in 2011, and he could be a huge addition to this offensive line. I understand that he has injury concerns, but the Titans need to do whatever they can to protect Cam Ward. This would also allow J.C. Latham to move back to right tackle, his college position. Signing Smith is a risky move, but I think it will be worth it. Washington Commanders, wide receiver Keenan Allen. The Commanders had a magical 2024 season, but there's still some moves they need to make in order to make sure that they stay Super Bowl contenders. One of those moves is getting a true wide receiver 2 next to Terry McLaurin. Allen didn't have his best season in 2024, but considering the Bears' offensive situation, that's not too surprising. He can still be the reliable slot option that the Commanders need. McLaurin is going to get a lot of attention, so having Keenan Allen one-on-one with a slot corner or safety on most plays is going to be extremely helpful. Allen may be old, but he's still got it. But that's it. That is one pending free agent that every NFL team needs to sign in the 2025 offseason. Where do you agree? Where do you disagree? Comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, then please drop a like and subscribe if you're new, and that's it for me. See ya!